She says she does not know. If they did, her parents never ever talked about it. I asked her if her parents ever shared traditional teachings with her or took her to ceremonies such as the sweat lodge, the shake tent, or the sun dance. No, she tells me, but she does go on to say that every year in the summer, during the time when the blueberries were big, they would travel by boat to Hole River and camp for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. She tells me this is the only time and place where she recalls ever hearing the drum, and this is the place where she recalls dancing happily with other little kids. This is the place where she says she witnessed the shake tent ceremony for the very first time and became so terrified when it started to shake wildly from side to side that she ran as fast as she could into her tent and covered herself with blankets from head to toe. When I was growing up, my mom and dad always told me to be proud that I was an Indian. But I was confused. I did not know what there was to be proud of. My mother and father did not ever share traditional Ojibwe teachings with me, nor did they ever take me to any traditional ceremonies. Instead, I was sent off to Sunday school for most of my childhood years. This is where I learned about God. This is where I learned I had a spirit. This is where I learned how to pray. This is where I learned the teachings of Jesus Christ. Years later, in my adult years, I became mentally, physically, and emotionally sick. I started to go to traditional ceremonies. I offered tobacco and prayed for healing. Going to these ceremonies, I started to feel a sense of connectedness to my ancestors. I felt honored to pray and dance in the same lodges as my grandfathers and my grandmothers once stood so long ago. This is where I started to feel healthy again. It is through the traditional songs, dances, prayers, and ceremonies where I started to feel empowered, so proud, so blessed, and so loved. I started to have many dreams that I believe came to me from my grandfathers and grandmothers. I honored these dreams by offering tobacco, and I made a vow to God that I would Sundance for 4 years. I danced and I prayed for life for all people, for my family and for myself. In my final year, my 78-year-old mother came to the Sundance ceremony to support me. This was the first time she had ever been to the lodge. I pierced that year for my family, for my people, and to give thanks to God, the grandfathers and the grandmothers for all they have done for me. When I was finished piercing, they unhooked me and took me to the tree and fanned me down. When they were finished, I turned around, and right there in front of me stood my mother, tears flowing down her beautiful face. Her arms reached out to me. She held me for a long, long time, and we wept together at the sacred tree. That day, my mother, my son, my siblings, my nieces and nephews, including my husband, stood behind me when I was pierced and attached to that sacred tree. 4 generations of my family prayed together at that sacred tree. 4 generations of my family embraced and wept at that sacred tree. That day, 4 generations of my family journeyed back to our innocence.